My father died 3 days ago today. My stepmother laughed as she got everything, and I got a bankrupt bakery. Then a developer called offering 6 figures for it. I stared at my phone in disbelief as Caroline's laughter echoed through Attorney Wilson's office. $250,000 cash offer, Alex Morgan repeated. His voice was smooth, confident. The paperwork can be ready tomorrow. I'll need to think about it, I managed to say, my eyes fixed on Caroline and my half-sister Vanessa. As they gathered their expensive handbags, already discussing how to spend their millions, the mahogany-paneled room of the law office suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. Just minutes earlier, Attorney Wilson had read the will with his dry, emotionless voice. My stepmother Caroline received our family home, the lake house, and 80% of Dad's investment portfolio. Vanessa got his car collection and the remaining investments, and I, Sophia Seiferder, the daughter who left Riverdale for New York 10 years ago, got Weiferberg Family Bakery, a failing business 6 months behind on its mortgage with equipment that barely functioned. How fitting, Caroline had said, her perfect red lips curving into a smirk. A failing business for the failing daughter attorney. Wilson had frowned at her comment but said nothing. Now, as I ended the call, Caroline approached her designer heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Got a friend to stay with? She asked, false concern dripping from her voice. You know you could probably get a few thousand for that land if you are desperate. Met in for a deposit on some tiny apartment. I clutched the manila envelope containing the bakery deed and keys. Aglisite. That was a developer. He offered $250,000 for the property. The satisfaction of watching Caroline's smug smile falter was worth more than any inheritance. That's impossible, she said, her voice sharper now. That place is worthless, apparently not to everyone. I tucked the envelope into my bag. I guess Dad knew what he was doing after all. Vanessa stepped forward, suddenly interested. You should take it, Sophia. It's a good deal for a failing business. You can go back to New York with some actual money. I studied my half-sister's face, so much like our father's, yet with Caroline's calculating eyes. There was something in her urgency that made me suspicious. I think I'll take some time to look over my inheritance first, I said. After all, if a developer is willing to pay that much, maybe here is something valuable about it I should understand. Caroline's perfectly manicured hand gripped her daughter's arm. Don't be ridiculous. That bakery has been losing money for years. Your father was too sentimental to sell it, but you've always been practical, Sophia. The way she said practical made it sound like an insult. I shouldered my bag and headed for the door. I'll be in town for a while. I might as well see what Dad left me before I make any decisions outside in the crisp autumn air. I leaned against my rental car and opened the manila envelope. Implied were the deed, a set of old brass keys, and a smaller envelope with my name written in my father's distinctive handwriting. Inside that envelope was a single folded page. Wick Sophia *sin. I know you think I've been unfair, and perhaps I have, but the bakery is more than it seems. Before you sell, look behind the old family portrait in the office. What you find might change your mind. *sin. There are reasons Caroline wants this property gone. Purple them. Dad. I stared at the note, my heart pounding. What was hidden in that old bakery? What did my father know that he couldn't or wouldn't tell me while he was alive? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Morgan here. I can increase to $300K for a quick sale. Let me know ASAP. The urgency only deepened my suspicion. I started my car and headed toward Pine Street. Whatever secret was hiding in Trend Ivyberg Family Bakery, I was going to find it before anyone could stop me. The Ray Tybird Family Bakery stood on the corner of Pine and Maple, its faded blue awning sagging like a tired smile. I hadn't been inside since high school when Dad still hired actual bakers instead of trying to run it himself between business trips. The brass key stuck in the lock requiring a wiggle and firm push before the door swung open with a protesting creak. Dust motes danced in the afternoon sunlight streaming through grimy windows. The display cases stood empty, the counter wiped clean. At least Dad had closed up properly before his heart attack. I moved past the public area into the kitchen, industrial mixers and ovens lined the walls, looking far older than I remembered. A stack of unpaid bills sat on the small desk in the corner. 6 months of mortgage payments, utility warnings, and supplier invoices. The total made me wince. Dad's office was in the back, a small room that smelled of coffee and old books. The family portrait hung exactly where it had for decades. Dad, Mom, and me at age 6. Before cancer took her and Caroline took her place. Before Vanessa was born and I became an afterthought. I lifted the heavy frame, revealing a wall safe I'd never known existed. My mother's birthday. 05-12-78. The lock clicked open on the first try. Inside, I found a leather portfolio and a USB drive. The portfolio contained property documents, not just for the bakery, but for the entire block. My father owned all 5 buildings, each under a different audit. And beneath the documents lay a contract with Morgan Development, dated just 3 months ago. A preliminary agreement for the sale of the entire block for $12 million. My hands trembled as I plugged the USB drive into my laptop. Files appeared. Financial records, emails, photos. I clicked on the most recent document, dated 1 week before Dad's death. Carolyn *scene. I've discovered your arrangement with Morgan. Did you think I wouldn't notice the revised contract removing Sophia from the proceeds? We'll discuss this when I return from Boston. I will not allow you to disinherit my daughter *scene. The bakery and all associated properties will go to Sophia, as was always my intention. I've spoken with Wilson and changed my will accordingly. *send. This discussion is not finished. James I attached were emails between Caroline and Alex Morgan planning to sell the entire block after Dad's death for a premium, with Caroline receiving a consulting fee of $2 million beyond her inheritance. The deal required the bakery property, my inheritance, to complete the package. My phone rang, making me jump. Caroline's name flashed on the screen. I silenced it, my mind racing. Dad had known he'd planned to confront Caroline, but his heart attack came first. Had she known about his heart condition? The thought sent a chill through me. I was still processing when the bakery's front door chimed through the office window. I saw Alex Morgan himself step inside, surveying the space with the confidence of someone who already owned it. I quickly returned the documents to the safe, pocketing the USB drive. If he knew I discovered the truth, his generous offer might disappear. Or worse, hello, Morgan called out. Mr. Spigberg, your stepmother mentioned you might be here. I stepped out of the office, closing the door behind me, so Caroline had sent him, of course. Mr. Morgan, I didn't expect a personal visit. He smiled, all perfect teeth and expensive cologne. I was in the neighborhood and thought we could discuss my offer in person. His eyes scanned the bakery. It's in worse shape than I remembered. Funny, I said, crossing my arms. From the outside, it doesn't look like much, but inside, it's worth a lot more than I realized. His smile flickered. $300,000 is more than fair for a failing business, is it? Because I think we both know this block is worth much more than that. The change in his demeanor was subtle but immediate, a slight narrowing of the eyes, a tension in his jaw. I'm not sure what you mean. I think you do, but I need time to consider my options, all of them. He stepped closer. Some opportunities have expiration dates, Miss Weiferberg. My offer is good until Friday. After he left, I locked the bakery and drove to my hotel, my mind churning with possibilities. The entire block was worth $12 million and Caroline had tried to steal my share, but something still didn't add up. Why was this specific location so valuable to Morgan Development? I needed more information and I knew just where to start. Linda Meyer had been my father's secretary for 20 years. If anyone knew what he'd been planning, it would be her. As I pulled into the hotel parking lot, I spotted Caroline's Mercedes parked near the entrance. She stood by the lobby doors, arms crossed, waiting. This was no coincidence. The game was just beginning. There you are, Caroline called as I approached the hotel entrance. We need to talk. Her designer outfit and perfect makeup made me acutely aware of my dusty jeans and the flower smudge on my sleeve from the bakery. About what? I asked, stopping a few feet away. Don't be difficult, Sophia, Alex told me. You are being unreasonable about the offer. She glanced around the parking lot, lowering her voice. $250,000 for that dump is more than generous. $300 now, I corrected. He raised the price. I wonder why. Her eyes narrowed. He mentioned that. Don't be greedy, take the money and go back to New York. Why do you care what I do with my inheritance? I don't. She snapped too quickly. But your father would want you to be practical. That bakery was his albatross. He'd want you free of it. Funny. I found a letter suggesting otherwise. She stiffened. What letter? Dad left instructions, specific ones. The mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something like fear before her practiced smile returned. Your father was sentimental about that place, but sentimentality doesn't pay the bills, does it? You are unemployed, Sophia. You need that that money not as much as she needed me to sell apparently. I'll make my own decisions about my inheritance, I said, moving past her toward the hotel doors. She grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging in. Listen to me. There are complications you don't understand, that property has issues, structural problems, environment concerns. Selling now is the smart choice. I pulled away. Then why is Morgan offering so much? Developers don't overpay for problematic properties. She had no answer for that. Goodbye, Caroline. I have calls to make. In my hotel room, I called Linda Meyer. She agreed to meet for coffee the next morning, her voice warming when I explained who I was. Next, I researched Morgan Development. Their downtown revitalization project was all over the local news. A luxury hotel and shopping complex promising to transform Riverdale's future. The proposed location wasn't specified, but the artist renderings looked oddly familiar. I pulled out my laptop and studied the block where the bakery stood. 4 other businesses, a bookstore, a tailor shop, a small art gallery, and a vacant storefront, all owned by my father through separate arches. According to the documents I'd found, I searched property records online and confirmed what Dad's files had shown. He'd systematically bought the entire block over the past 15 years, using different company names. Not even Caroline had known the extent of his real estate holdings. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, and this is Vanessa. We should talk privately. Means a meet at Riverdale Park tomorrow at 8 a.m. It's about the bakery. Asterisk. I hesitated. Could I trust Vanessa? We'd never been close, but she wasn't Caroline, and I needed allies. Diopt. Okay, I replied. On the bench by the duck pond. Asterisk. In the morning, I met with Linda first. The silver-haired woman hugged me tightly before we sat down at the coffee shop. Your father was so proud of you, she said, stirring her tea. He kept every article about your marketing campaigns in New York. The thought of Dad following my career while we barely spoke made my throat tight. Linda, what was going on with the bakery? Why did he keep it when it was losing money? She glanced around before leaning forward. The bakery was never about the bakery, Sophia. It was about the building, the whole block. Your grandfather bought that building in the 1950s because of what's underneath it. Natural springs, pure water, some of the cleanest in the state. Your father discovered this about 10 years ago when he had environmental testing done for insurance purposes. My mind raced and nobody else knows, Morgan suspects. That's why he's been trying to buy the block for years. His hotel plans include a luxury spa using local natural resources. The water rights alone are worth millions, and Caroline, what does she know? Linda's expression hardened. Everything your father planned to tell you after sorting things out with her. But then, his heart attack, I finished. She nodded. Too convenient if you ask me. I felt cold despite the warm coffee shop. Are you suggesting? I am not suggesting anything, Linda said carefully. Just that Caroline was very interested in his heart medication in the weeks before he died. She handed me a small key, Tayue Unit 227 at Riverdale Self-Storage. Your father kept backup records there, things he didn't want in the house. I thanked her and headed for my meeting with Vanessa, my mind spinning with new questions. What had my father discovered about Caroline? And what would I find in that storage unit at the park? Vanessa was already waiting, looking nervous and out of place in her designer clothes. Thanks for coming, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. Here's something you need to know about the bakery and about my mother. Vanessa looked nothing like the confident, smirking woman from the attorney's office. She kept glancing over her shoulder, her fingers nervously twisting a gold bracelet. What about your mother? I prompted. She's desperate for you to sell that bakery, Vanessa said, more than desperate, obsessed. After you left yesterday, she was on the phone with Alex Morgan for an hour, then she met with some guy I've never seen before. She lowered her voice. A guy who didn't look like a businessman, if you know what I mean. What are you saying? I'm saying be careful, Mom's not above doing whatever it takes to get what she wants. Vanessa pulled out her phone, showing me a photo she'd taken through a window. Caroline sitting in her car with a hard-faced man in a leather jacket. She told me she was getting her nails done. This was at the abandoned warehouse district. Why are you telling me this? Vanessa looked away. Dad called me the day before he died. He said if anything happened to him, I should make sure you got the bakery and everything related to it. He made me promise. Her eyes met mine. He sounded scared. Sophia, Dad never sounded scared. A chill ran through me despite the morning sunshine. Did you tell the police? Why would I? It was a heart attack. But her eyes said she'd considered it. Look, I don't know what's going on, but the way Mom's acting, just watch your back, okay? As Vanessa walked away, my phone buzzed with a text from Alex Morgan. For considered my offer. Time is running short. Asterisk, I ignored it and drove straight to Riverdale Self-Storage. Unit 227 was at the back of the complex, secluded and easily overlooked. Inside were dozens of bankers' boxes meticulously labeled with dates and subjects. I gravitated toward the most recent ones. What I found confirmed Linda's story and more geological surveys showing the natural springs under the bakery block. Water quality tests, market analyses of bottled water companies and luxury spas. My father had been planning something big, not just selling the land but developing it himself. And in a folder marked Cess and Carolyn, I found what he'd feared most. Evidence she'd been funneling money from his accounts to offshore holdings for years. Small amounts that added up to over $2 million. Evidence of an affair with none other than Alex Morgan dating back 3 years, and most disturbing printouts of research on untraceable heart attack triggers. My hand shook as I took photos of everything with my phone. On my way out, I noticed a man watching from a parked car. He quickly looked away when our eyes met, but my instincts were screaming. I drove back to the bakery, using a circuitous route, checking repeatedly to make sure I wasn't followed. The bakery seemed untouched, but I still felt uneasy as I unlocked the door. In flight, I went straight to the office to check the wall safe. The documents were still there, seemingly undisturbed. I spent the afternoon going through the kitchen trying to understand what my father had been doing in his final months. The equipment was old but not broken, just unused. The refrigerator held sourdough starter carefully labeled with feeding dates, the last one just 2 days before Dad died. In the back room, I found what looked like a test kitchen setup. Recipe cards, ingredient measurements, detailed notes about unturation percentages and rise times. Dad had been baking quinoa baking, but why when the business was closed to customers? I found my answer in a file labeled Itovurg Heritage Line. Hepchin materials for artisanal bread and pastries made with pure Riverdale spring water. My father had been preparing to relaunch the bakery as an artisanal brand, leveraging the secret that made this property so valuable. As I studied the materials, the front door chimed. I froze, listening to footsteps in the main room. It was Alex Morgan. I quickly shut the file and stepped into the main room. Mr. Morgan, I don't recall inviting you in. He smiled. All business charm. There was unlocked. Just wanted to follow up on our conversation. I've been authorized to go to $350,000. The price keeps going up, I observed. I am starting to think the property is worth even more than that. His smile tightened. Look, I am trying to be fair here. This block is perfect for our project, but we can build elsewhere if needed. This is my final offer. I'll need more time to consider. I said, what's to consider? That's more than 10 times what this business is worth. His tone sharpened. Caroline mentioned you found some old documents, family stuff. She asked me to help clear things up. So they were working together, did she? Your father had some unrealistic ideas about this property. The springs he discovered are minimal, not commercially viable. I'd hate to see you turn down a generous offer based on his misconceptions. I appreciate your concern, I said, not bothering to hide my sarcasm, but I'll make my decision based on my own research. His expression darkened. Be reasonable, Sophia. Some opportunities don't come around twice. After he left, I double-checked all the locks and called a locksmith to come change them immediately. While waiting, I explored the basement, finding the access point to the natural spring my father had documented. The water bubbled up crystal clear into a collection basin he'd installed. I filled a glass and tasted it, pure, sweet, and cold. Clit gold hidden beneath a failing bakery that wasn't failing at all, just paused, waiting for its transformation. Caroline again, this time I answered. We need to talk, she said without preamble. Dinner tonight, just the two of us. Why? Because if you don't, you might regret it. 7 o'clock. Marcello's, she hung up before I could respond. The threat wasn't even veiled. I glanced at the new locks being installed and wondered if they would be enough. Marcello's was the fanciest restaurant in Riverdale, all white tablecloths and hushed conversations. Caroline was already seated when I arrived, sipping a martini. She'd chosen a corner table away from other diners. You were late, she said as I sat down. Traffic a lie, I'd been copying everything from the storage unit onto secure cloud storage insurance against whatever Caroline was planning. She signaled the waiter for another martini. I'll get right to the point. Your father wasn't thinking clearly toward the end. He had these grandiose ideas about the bakery, but the business model wasn't viable. The springs are contaminated. That's not what the tests show. Her eyes narrowed. You've been busy, Dad kept good records. The waiter delivered her second martini. She took a long sip before continuing. Whatever you think you know, you don't have the full picture. James was unwell. Mentally, he was seeing connections that weren't there, making accusations. Like your affair with Alex Morgan. She set down her glass with a sharp click. That's absurd, is it? Because Dad had photos, hotel receipts, private messages, color drained from her face, then returned in angry splotches. You are bluffing. I am not, just like I am not bluffing about the offshore accounts. $2 million. Caroline, did you think he wouldn't notice? You have no idea what you were talking about, she hissed, but her composure was cracking. I know exactly what I am talking about. Dad found out everything. He was going to confront you, change his will to cut you out entirely, but he had a convenient heart attack first. Are you accusing me of something? Her voice was dangerously low. I am just stating facts. Dad discovered your betrayal. He planned to expose you. Then he suddenly died, and you nearly got away with taking everything except for one small bakery he made sure. Went to me. Caroline leaned forward. Listen to me very carefully. Take Morgan's offer and go back to New York. Criggy about water rights and bakery revivals and whatever else you think you've discovered, because if you don't, things will get unpleasant. Is that a threat? It's reality. You are not equipped for this fight, Sophia. You never were. It's why your father sent you away to college and why you stayed away. You don't have what it takes. Her words stung because they touched an old wound, my certainty that I'd been a disappointment to my father. But the documents I'd found told a different story. Dad had been proud of me, had been protecting me. I'm not selling, I said. In fact, I'm reopening the bakery. The 90 Bear carriage's line Dad was developing sounds promising, don't you think? Caroline's mask slipped completely. You stupid girl, you have no idea what forces you are dealing with. Morgan isn't just a developer. He has connections, people who handle problems like the man you met at the warehouse district yesterday. She froze. You are having me followed, no need. Vanessa took photos. She's worried about you, Caroline. Vanessa? Betrayal flashed across her face. You are lying, am I? Ask her yourself. I stood up, dinner's over, and by the way, I've shared all of Dad's files with my attorney. If anything happens to me, the police get everything. It was a bluff. I hadn't had time to find an attorney yet, but Caroline didn't know that. She stared at me, calculating, dangerous. This isn't over, she finally said. On that we agree. Back at my hotel, I found the door to my room slightly ajar. My heart pounded as I pushed it open. The place had been ransacked, drawers emptied, mattress upended, my laptop gone. The USB drive which I'd kept with me suddenly felt heavy in my pocket. I backed out and called the police from the lobby. While waiting, I made another call to an old college friend who'd become a business attorney in Boston. I explained the situation in terse, careful language. Get out of that hotel, she advised. Stay somewhere they wouldn't expect, and I'll fly out tomorrow. We need to secure those assets properly fast. After filing the police report, I checked into a small motel on the edge of town under a different name, paying cash. Then I called Vanessa. Someone broke into my hotel room. I told her your mother threatened me at dinner. Oh God, she whispered. Where are you? Are you safe? I'd rather not say where, but I'm okay. I hesitated. Vanessa, why are you helping me? You stood to gain if I sold to Morgan. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Dad called me that night, she finally said, her voice tight with emotion. He told me he discovered something terrible about Mom, that he was afraid I didn't believe him. I thought he was being dramatic. When he died the next day, her voice broke. I should have listened. I should have done something. You can do something now, I said. I need information about Morgan and his project. Anything you can find. Okay. But Sophia, be careful. Mom wasn't exaggerating about Morgan's connections. The man I saw her with, I looked him up online. He's been arrested multiple times for assault. They call him the Fixer. After we hung up, I sat on the motel bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling. My father had been murdered. I was now certain of it, and the people responsible were still out there, determined to get what they wanted. Tomorrow I'd meet my attorney friend at the bakery. We'd document everything, create the legal protections I needed. But tonight, I needed to stay alive. I pulled out the bakery keys, rolling them between my fingers. An idea began to form. A way to turn the tables, to make the hunters become the hunted. If Caroline and Morgan wanted the bakery so badly, perhaps it was time to give it to them on my terms. I woke before dawn and drove to the bakery while the streets were still empty. Intrusion in the back entrance, I slipped inside and went straight to the basement. There I set up the small security cameras I'd purchased at an all-night superstore, one aimed at the spring access point, others covering the main floor and entrance. Then I did something my father would have appreciated. I baked his recipes, were meticulous, the sourdough starter still alive and vibrant. I mixed dough with the spring water, feeling a strange connection to him as my hands worked the same motions his had. By sunrise, the scent of fresh bread filled the bakery. At 8 a.m., my attorney friend Megan arrived. She viewed the springs, examined the documents, and whistled low. Your father was sitting on a gold mine, she said, and not just the water rights. The entire block position for Morgan's development. You are holding all the cards unless they kill me. Megan's expression sobered. That's why we're doing this properly. She opened her briefcase. I've prepared paperwork to place everything in a trust. We'll record your statement about your father's death as well, with all evidence included. If anything happens to you, it goes public. By noon, the legal protections were in place. I also had appointments with the State Environmental Office and the Historical Society, moves that would complicate any immediate development plans. That afternoon, I put a grand reopening Saturday sign in the bakery window. Beneath it, smaller text read, featuring Heistableberg heritage bread made with pure Riverdale Springs water. My phone rang almost immediately. Morgan, what the hell do you think you are doing? He demanded, reopening my family business. Isn't that what my father would want? This is a mistake, Sophia. My offer stands until 5 p.m. today. After that, all deals are off. No deal necessary. I am keeping the bakery. After hanging up, I called Linda Meyer and the handful of former bakery employees whose contact information I'd found in Dad's files. By the end of the day, I had a small team ready to help with Saturday's reopening. I was arranging fresh bread in the display case when the bell over the door jingled. Caroline stood there, her face a mask of controlled fury. What is this nonsense? She demanded, gesturing at the sign, just honoring Dad's legacy. I said, you should try the sourdough. His recipe is amazing. Stop playing games. Morgan has withdrawn his offer because of your ridiculous stunt. Good, I wasn't planning to accept anyway. She stepped closer. Listened to me. You are going to close this place down and leave town. Anna Twine told what I met her gaze. You'll kill me like you killed Dad. The color drained from her face. What did you say? I know what you did, Caroline. I have proof. His heart medication was tampered with. The autopsy showed it, but no one thought to look for foul play in a man with a heart condition. This was a bluff. I had suspicions but no proof, but her reaction told me everything. Pure panic flashed across her face. That's absurd, she said, but her voice shook. No one would believe such a ridiculous accusation. The police might, especially with the financial evidence. $2 million in offshore accounts, the affair with Morgan, the timing of Dad's death just as he discovered everything. It paints a compelling picture. She seemed to shrink before my eyes, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. You don't understand, I had no choice. Morgan has leverage. He knows things about me, about my past. If I didn't help him get this property, he threatened to expose me. What could possibly justify murder? She sank into a chair suddenly, looking old and tired. I am not who you think I am. My background, my identity. It's all fabricated. Before I met your father, I was someone else. 7 who did things. Morgan discovered the truth. I stared at her, trying to reconcile this broken woman with the polished, confident stepmother who had terrorized my youth. That doesn't excuse what you did to Dad. I didn't want him to die, she whispered. The medication was just supposed to make him sick enough to delay his meeting with the attorney. I didn't know his heart was so weak. The confession hung in the air between us. My hands trembled with rage and shock. All these years, I'd thought Dad had simply preferred Caroline and Vanessa. In reality, he'd been trapped in a marriage with a woman who ultimately killed him. I recorded this entire conversation, I said quietly. The police are on their way. Her head snapped up. You are bluffing. I held up my phone, showing the active recording. No bluff. It's over, Caroline, as if on cue. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Caroline looked toward the door, then back at me, her expression hardening into something dangerous. You think you won? Morgan won't let this happen? He has too much invested. She reached into her purse. Don't, I warned, backing away. The bakery door burst open, but it wasn't the police. It was Vanessa, breathless and wide-eyed. Mom, stop. It's over, she froze, seeing her mother's hand emerging from her purse with a small revolver. Vanessa, get out of here, Caroline ordered. Number Vanessa moved to stand beside me. I heard everything. I was outside the whole time. Caroline's hand wavered. You don't understand what's at stake. I understand you killed Dad, Vanessa said, her voice breaking. How could you? The sirens grew louder. Caroline looked between us, the gun still in her hand, indecision on her face. Then, with surprising quickness, she bolted for the back door. Vanessa started to follow, but I held her back. Let the police handle it. We watched through the window as Caroline ran straight into the arms of two police officers coming around the building. The gun clattered to the pavement as they tackled her. Vanessa turned to me, tears streaming down her face. I am so sorry. I should have believed Dad. I should have done something. I put my arm around my half-sister's shoulders. You are doing something now. That's what matters. As the police led Caroline away, my phone rang again. Morgan, you've made a serious mistake, he said without preamble. Caroline may be finished, but I am just getting started. Actually, Mr. Morgan, I think you are finished too. The police will want to talk to you about your relationship with Caroline and your knowledge of my father's death, and the DA will be very